Bava Batra, Daf Yomi Bava Batra and Hamud Aleph. We're dealing with husband and wife relationships in matters of inheritance, הבעל, יורש, אשתו, but we're going to reveal amazing insights and understandings into the mysterious relationship between a husband and wife. Mysterious because a husband and wife are not blood relations, and yet their relationship is even closer than that of a blood relationship. And how does that work? What is that? We're not just soulmates with our spouses, we're bodymates as well. And that has ramifications, so much so that although the Torah makes no reference as to any inheritance rights between husbands and wives, the Mishnah takes it for granted that there is such a right. And our piece of Gemara tries to seek the source as to where that in fact comes from. And the Mishnah takes for granted that there is such a right, because if there's a right for a son to inherit a father and a father to inherit a son, because as we've been learning, it's not even a question of Yerusha in the normal sense of the word, it's nachala. And the idea of nachala, as we talked about in the language of the Chumash, not the language of the Mishnah, but in the language of the Chumash, nachala is from the word nochel, that naturally flows, the estate naturally flows from father to son. If it naturally flows from father to son because they're so closely bound, for husband and wife should certainly be the same, because husband and wife are also very closely bound. And if that is the case, is it reciprocal? The Mishnah deals with which inheritances are reciprocal, where a person can bequeath to another and inherit from another. And the Mishnah says there that the inheritance relationship of husband and wife is not reciprocal. The husband inherits the wife doesn't inherit from the husband. Where do we get that from? In understanding these laws of inheritance, it's also important to appreciate that what we're talking about in inheritance is not the rights to the estate. It's the responsibilities of managing the estate. We often look at it and think of the rights. Why does this one inherit, this one doesn't? It's who manages the estate. So when we say the women folk don't inherit if there are men there, if there are sons, then the wife and in any case the wife, and in that case the daughters don't inherit. It's not just that they don't have a right to the estate, it's that they don't have the responsibility to manage the estate. That the responsibility of management is the responsibility of the sons if there are sons, and they in turn have to manage the estate in such a way that they're taking care of their sisters and they're taking care of their mother, the widow. That's a separate issue, that they've got to take care of them. The question is who's responsible, who manages the estate? And that's really what the whole parsha of Yerusha deals with. The shir is dedicated by Michael and Glynis Sklar. They're regular listeners to the Matmonim. They've been Talmudim for many, many years. It's in memory of Glynis's father, who was a doctor in Rhodesia at the time, Zimbabwe, Dr. Michelson. Avram Dov ben Zalman, his yortzeit is on the 13th of Tishrei. What's interesting is he was the grandson of a rabbi by the name of Tzvi Ze'ev Hershowitz. And he was a rabbi in Somerset West Strand, a little town on False Bay, about an hour away from Cape Town. And this was the story in South Africa. In those little towns, there were rabbis and reverends. And their job was to keep the community going and to be the cheder teacher and to, in many cases, be the shoichet. But in some cases, these were amazing people. He was sent to South Africa in the beginning of the 20th century by the Tel Zerov. He became the rabbi of Somerset Strand, and his Chidushei Torah are published. So a little rabbi in a little town in South Africa wrote Chidushei Torah that are published. So Glynis comes from such a line. I've always said in South Africa, people are not more than 2 generations from Talmidei Chachomim. It's very different in the United States, where people can have 6 or 7 generations they can't trace a frum person. In South Africa, you just start scratching the surface, and 2, 3 generations there's a Talmid Chacham in the family. And this is such an example, so we're grateful to Michael and Glynis for their support, and their both their moral support and their financial support. It all revolves around the posuk in Bamidbar, Ve'im ein achim la'aviv u'netatem et nachalato l'she'ero ha'karov elav. If there are no sons, then it goes to the father. If the father's no longer alive, it goes to the father's brothers, the uncles. If the father's brothers are no longer alive, it goes to the father's brothers' children, to the cousin. If they're no longer alive, you go to the grandfather, and then to the second cousins, and second cousins once removed, and third cousins, and so the inheritance goes. L'she'ero ha'karov elav mishpachto v'yarash. It goes to the relative who is closest. That's where the inheritance is. The pasuk seems to read it quite simply. Asks our Gemara, Minani Mili, where does our Mishnah get it from that a man can can inherit from his wife, and even more important, says the Rashbam, where does he get it from? That it's not reciprocal, that she can't inherit from him. Where do we see such a principle in the Chumash at all? It mentions nothing in this fundamental posuk which articulates the whole law of Nachala. And then the Gemara goes into a way of deconstructing and reconstructing the posuk, based on the bryce that we have on Daf Kuftet, that she'iro zu ishto. The word she'iro means wife. Well, that's also interesting, so why not say wife? Melamed she'abal yoresh et ishto. That teaches that the husband inherits from the wife. Yachol afhi tirashenu. Maybe it's reciprocal and she can inherit from him. Talmud loma v'yarash ota. It says in the feminine form, and he will inherit from her. V'yarash ota. Hu yoresh otave and he yoreshet oto. He inherits from her, she doesn't inherit from him. Again, remember, we're talking about the responsibility of managing the estate. This is the Gemara of Aikroy Lav Hachik Tivi. What are you doing with the posuk? That's not what it means. That's not what it says. And then Abaya and Rava go into an equally amazing, like fanciful reconstruction of the posuk in two different ways. Abaya has a bash at it, and Rava says, well, you're taking a surgeon's scalpel and cutting the posuk into little pieces and then re-stitching it together in any old way you want. And then Rava goes and does exactly the same thing, just in a different way. So it's an interesting piece of Gemara that we're not going to go into in detail, but rather to focus on this idea on which it is all based, that the word she'er means wife. What is that and why is that? So the Rashbam says back on Daf Kuftet, where we first see this brisa of she'iro zu ishto, ki dichtiv v'hayu lebasar echad. Rashbam says a strange thing. As it says, how do you know the word she'er means wife? Because it says in Breshit, and they will be one flesh. What's that got to do with anything? And it also says in the laws of what a man is responsible for to a woman. And it's talking there in the case where the father bought a young woman to serve as a servant, and part of the idea of a poor family hiring their daughter out to be a servant to a wealthy person was in the hope that the wealthy person would either marry the young girl, if he was a young man, or if he was an older man, that he would suggest that his son marries the young girl, and that way she has a future. She's taken into a wealthy family. And the Torah says there that you need to be careful even if you take another wife. So the man maybe takes this young girl who was working as a servant in the home, and later on he marries another woman. Be careful not to in any way diminish the first wife's rights. She'ira ksuta v'onata lo yigra. And from there we learn the spousal rights. She'er, ksut, and ona. And there's not unanimity as to what that means. Ksut seems to mean clothing. A man has to provide clothing for his wife. Onata simply seems to mean, according to most, the frequency of intimacy. That she has a right to frequent intimate relations. She'ira, there's a bit of a discussion in Gemara Ksuvas Daf Kufchet, and we'll see in a moment. But the Ramban says, very similar to the Rashbam, this is the Ramban in Chumash, V'lachen ani omer ki perush she'er b'chol makom basar hadavek v'hakarov libsaro shel adam. The word she'er means basar. It means flesh. Flesh that is very close to one. And that's why the Rashbam says, and they will become lebasar echad. And it says the wife is she'er. So you see from there, that the wife who is she'er is basar echad. That's where we learn from that they are closely linked together. So that when the Torah says v'natatem et nachalato li she'ero hakarov elav, it could just say v'natatem et nachalato la karov elav. You shall give the inheritance to the one who is closest in relationships. Why throw in the word she'er? That's to introduce this idea, at least through implication, that the husband has a right of inheritance from the wife because of the closeness and intimacy of their relationship. Let's have a look at those two psukim that the Rashbam bases his comments on. The first one is in Breshis. Al ken yazov ish et aviv et imo. When a man gets married, he leaves his father and his mother. And that's often a big problem in early marriages, that the boy gets married and doesn't leave the father and mother. And that's a big problem in the marriage. There's a parting when a boy gets married. If he's not ready to leave mom and dad yet, he shouldn't get married yet. If he gets married, he starts a new relationship. V'davak b'ishto, and he shall cleave to his wife, vayu levasar echad, and they should become one flesh. An unbelievable comment. It doesn't say they'll become soulmates. It says they'll become fleshmates. They'll become one flesh. And then the other pasuk is says the Malbim, same as we've got in the Ramban and in the Rashbam. Shem she'er nirdaf im basar. The word she'er is a synonym for flesh. For she'er, read flesh. And that introduces this whole idea into the pasuk about inheritance. The Hamek She'ele explains it. What does it mean if we look at the pasuk of she'era ksuta v'onata lo yigra? If the word she'era means flesh, how do you read that pasuk? So I understand ksuta, you've got to give her clothing. Onata, you've got to give her frequent intimacy. There's got to be a frequency of intimacy. But what does she'era mean? Flesh. She'era, her flesh you must give her. What does that mean? Explains the Netziv in the Hamek Sheila. We've spoken before about the Shi'iltas de Rav Achai Gon. That's one of the first, or probably the first sefer we have after the time of the Gemara. Rav Achai was one of the first of the Goinim, and we have his Shi'iltas, which is, it goes through the mitzvahs of the Torah and writes in a very poetic and very dense, concentrated form. And the Netziv writes this beautiful Perush Hamek Sheila. And in Parashas Emor he writes, Mishum de Rabbeinu posek Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. The Shi'iltas holds like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov in Ksubis, which we quote in the next piece. De mefaresh she'era ksuta lefum she'era ten ksuta. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov learns the posuk. If you look at the posuk, the second line on the second page of the source sheet, imacher tikach lo, the way he reads it is she'era ksuta, ksuta v'onata lo yigra. So the word ksuta links both to the word before it and the word after it. What does that mean? That means shelo yitein shel yadalis kena, give a wife the clothing that is suitable for her. Don't make a young girl dress like a bobber. A bobber can dress like a bobber, and if she's a bobber, don't give her miniskirts. Make it age appropriate. Be sure that that your wife dresses and keeps up with the fashions, and that she's dressing in an age appropriate way. Interesting. Says Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. V'im kein perush she'era hainu besara. That's why she'er means besar, meaning she'era ksuta. Give her clothing that suits her figure, that suits her body. She'era means body. Give her clothing that suits her body. Don't give her kind of a tent that you could wear if you're as thin as a stick, and you could wear as if you're as fat as a bas, and you wouldn't see the difference between the two women. Give her clothing that is suitable for who she is, for her basar. And that's why she'ero means ishto. She besaro mamash, because she is your flesh. Unbelievable. Your father is not your flesh. Your son is not your flesh. Your brother is not your flesh. You're a blood relationship, but it's not your flesh. But an isha is your flesh. Says the Ramban in Chumash, in Bereshit. Vayu lebasar echad. He starts off quoting Rashi. Why do they become? What does it mean, one flesh? Where's a man and a woman? He's lived all his life in Yerushalayim. She's lived all her life in Los Angeles, on the other side of the world. And they come together and they're basar echad. Where's the basar echad? Avlad notzar yedei shnehem v'sham naseh basaram echad. They become one because their DNA combines to create a child. So the basar echad, no other relationship does the DNA combine. In other relationships, you come from the same DNA. The father and the mother, the brothers share certain elements of DNA. But here, the DNA of the husband and the DNA of the wife combine to form a child. That's the basar echad, says Rashi. The ein bezer tam, says the Ramban. That's absurd. Ki gama be'ima v'chayayu lebasar echad bivladoteim. If you're talking, say it's about DNA, if this is a chemical thing, and this is interesting because it goes into the whole question of test tube babies, of combining DNA without relationships, just taking the chemicals of the husband and the chemicals of the wife and making a child. Are those parental relationships? What is it? According to Rashi, yes, it's the DNA combines, and that's where they become one. Says the Ramban, but then animals have got the same relationship. That's nothing unique to human beings. Animals don't have dveikut. They don't cling to one another in their sexual connections. The male finds a female, and it's just a transactional thing to have children, and therefore you can talk about the DNA and the chemical relationships. And then they go off. But in the case of Adam v'Chava, she was taken from his flesh. This is a unique species. This is not Adam running around. He gave names to all the animals. He looked among all the females in the world, and he found there was nobody suitable for him. So Hashem creates a female out of him. And they become one. And he embraces her to his bosom, and she is like one with him. And he will want to always be with her. That's the connection. The connection is the desire. When a man wants to be with a woman, that creates a relationship closer than a blood relationship. And although this was first established and embedded into the nature of Adam and Chava, it continued to be part of the being, of the makeup of all men and of all human men and women. So that the males cleave to the females. You see how a marriage is not just a legal contract. Just going into a magistrate's court and sign some papers. It doesn't make a marriage. That's not what it's about. A marriage is about the deep emotional attachments of a husband and wife that create with it a natural exclusivity. I always want to be with you also implies, and with nobody else. I want to be with you, not with anybody else. I don't even want to be hanging around my father and mother anymore. I'll honor them and respect them, and I'm grateful to have them, and they're wonderful people, but I don't want to hang out with them. I want to hang out with you. And they see their wives as if they are one. Look at this, the Ramban HaKadosh. The Ramban was an Adam Kodesh. What a person the Ramban was. What a Rishon the Ramban was. And look how he's writing about the relationship between a husband and a wife. And he brings other cases. So he'll leave the she'er. A father and mother are also she'er. They're just not as much she'er. They're also a blood relationship. And he will discover that his wife is closer to him than his parents are. That's marriage. When you discover that your wife is closer to you than your parents, that's marriage. So once we know what she'er is, then we're able to see. So again, it would be very difficult to learn this out of the Pasuk. There clearly seems to be an assumption that if we understand the principles of nachala, of the flow of responsibility to the son and to others, then you'll understand that the husband, if the wife passes away, that naturally the husband continues to manage the wife's estate and to support the children in the way that she would have done. But where does it say so in the Torah? There's no mention in the Torah of that. Says the Gemara, the word she'er is thrown into that pasuk, and the word she'er is thrown in because she'er means basar, she'er means flesh, and the essence of the relationship between man and husband and wife is a physical essence. It's not about soulmates and spirituality and kedusha. Of course, there's great kedusha in the marital relationship, but the foundation is a very physical foundation, a very emotional foundation, a very sensual foundation, a passionate foundation of a man and woman who want to be together. And that desire to be together, concretized in kiddushin, in the kedusha of actually declaring the oneness of the couple, changing the reality from two individuals to one unit, which is what marriage is. That's the meaning of she'er. And once we understand the meaning of she'er, we understand that the husband inherits from the wife, and the Gemara explains how we learn from this pasuk that it's not reciprocal, that if the husband dies, the wife does not inherit, but it goes to the children and to the other relatives.